The government wants to ban TikTok, and this will affect your crypto investments. I'm Busy NFT. You're watching All Things Web3. Now, this isn't my usual video about the blockchain, but stick with me because Senate Bill 686 could dramatically change your life. This Senate bill, also called the Restrict Act, is supposed to restrict the use of certain equipment and services owned by foreign adversaries that could pose a risk to national security. Now, in this bill, they actually call out some foreign adversaries by name, and it's all of the usual suspects: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, and Venezuela under Maduro's rule. So undoubtedly by now, you've seen both Republicans and Democrats talking about why we need to ban TikTok. From Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz on the Republican side to Mark Warner and President Biden on the Democrat side, the momentum for this ban is real. Which brings us to Senate Bill 686, which has co-sponsors on both sides of the aisle, from Joe Manchin to Mitt Romney. Now, I'm showing you pictures of all of these politicians because I want you to realize how universal this idea is in Congress. It seems over the past decade or so, we can't get these two parties to agree on nearly anything except for this, which of course makes me want to ask more questions. So to understand a little bit about why this is such a big deal, let's take a step back. Now, currently there's about 150 million users of TikTok in the US. And TikTok is owned by ByteDance, whose CEO, Shou Chew, recently spoke at a congressional hearing about this issue. ByteDance is a Chinese company, and Chinese law is clear.
2017 national intelligence law states very clearly that, quote, any organization or citizen shall support, assist, and cooperate with state intelligence work in accordance with the law and maintain the secrecy of all knowledge of state intelligence work. In other words, ByteDance and also your TikTok employees that live in China, they must cooperate with Chinese intelligence whenever they are called upon. And if they are called upon, they're bound to secrecy. That would include you.
So, of course, Chew argued that this wasn't happening at TikTok. And he even offered to build a U.S. data center to give Americans ownership over their own data. But congressional reps felt like he was dodging questions about China's role.
So, Mr. Chew, if the CCP tells ByteDance to turn over all data that TikTok has collected inside the U.S., even within Project Texas, do they have to do so, according to Chinese law?
Congressman, first, I'm Singaporean.
So the House reps talked a lot about how TikTok might be required to give data over to the Chinese government. But they did have to admit that other social media companies can be bad actors too. They're just American bad actors.
Encourage self-destructive behavior, purposefully allow drug cartels to communicate freely and organize human and drug trafficking. Now, to be fair, all social media companies could do that. But here's the difference. It is only TikTok that is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. All these other social media companies are not. Mr. Chew, do you agree?
Okay, so if China is the bad guy here, and that may be fair, what if China does have access to our data? Well, that's not new. In 2015, over 22 million Americans who worked for the federal government from 1984 to 2015 had their data hacked by China through the U.S. Government Office of Personnel Management. That same year, 700,000 people got hacked via the US IRS website. But this time, it was supposedly Russia, who happened to just sign a new trade deal with China this week. They probably spilled some tea, wouldn't you think? So to me, if we're honest, China has a lot of our data. And if they wanted more, they could probably get it on the dark web and not have all this bad publicity. And while we're doing some soul searching, we have to admit that the US does the very thing they're accusing others of doing, with the help of social media companies like Apple, Google, and Facebook. The US government demands private user data from social media companies all the time. For example, in 2021, American social media companies complied with 85% of the US government's 112,000 requests for personal data. These are your phone calls, your text, photos, shopping history, even your driving routes. And maybe these were all legitimate requests, I'm sure of that. But it wasn't long ago that the government getting information like this without your knowledge was kind of a big deal. Do you remember in 2013 when the government was caught spying on Americans' phone calls and emails without a warrant, without a criminal investigation? This is the reason you even know the name Edward Snowden, who revealed to the world that companies like Google and Facebook were helping the NSA conduct warrantless surveillance on American communications. So how does this impact us? Well, personally, I'm more concerned about the government coming after me for liking crypto and NFTs than I am about China influencing me via memes and dances. So while the government has been going after crypto exchanges and telling us that our investments might be illegal, I've been calling for clarity and legislation for crypto for over a year now. This is why we spend so much time looking at everything to understand the difference between what you're hearing and what's actually happening. So what you hear is something like what Representative Mike Gallagher said recently.
TikTok is owned by ByteDance, and ByteDance is effectively controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. The editor-in-chief of ByteDance, for example, is a CCP secretary and has talked about making sure all product lines, all business lines follow appropriate political controls.
It could have a devastating impact on our elections. And again, it gets back to the core issue. We don't want to give an entity like the Chinese Communist Party that weapon with which to not only influence our elections, but influence our sense of national identity or intensify hostility between Americans.
And I don't either, which is why it's important to actually read what's going to happen in the bill. Like most legislation, it's fairly vague and gives power to the Secretary of Commerce to have a broad scope of interpretation. For example, in Section 6 of the bill, the Secretary of Commerce gets to decide who is and who isn't a foreign adversary, and it would take a vote of Congress to negate that. In Section 8, the Secretary can create whatever rules, procedures, or action necessary to carry out this act. Now, I would love to believe that the government has our best interests at heart and would never go beyond their mandate. But the U.S. does have a little bit of a track record for going after people and ideas that they don't really like. Please let me be clear. I'm not saying that the government's going to abuse their power with this bill. I'm just saying it would be much simpler if they would just pass a simple bill that would ban a specific app, if that's their stated goal. Instead, this bill gives sweeping new powers to an organization that has shown itself to be anti-DeFi, anti-crypto, and anti-free choice of where I learn new dances. Now, some have called this the Patriot Act for the internet, where the government can access everything that you own that's connected to the internet, from your router and iPhone to your Ring doorbell. Others have argued that this bill gives new powers to the executive branch that have no checks or balances, and that the government will abuse them. Just this week, Democratic Senator Joe Manchin was decrying the way that the U.S. government was choosing to implement the Inflation Reduction Act, which he voted for. He said this administration is attempting at every turn to implement the bill it wanted, not the bill it actually passed. So there's a lot going on here, and I want to give the benefit of the doubt. But as a content creator, I'm not very excited about the idea of banning an app that has been able to give individuals a reach like never before. I'll clearly admit my bias there. For me, I'm just trying to do the math. For example, the way the FBI was going after individuals on Twitter, the way the SEC is consistently going after crypto, as you can see in many of my previous videos, and the fact that the government is talking about introducing a central bank digital currency, where then it would have access to everyone's transactions, all of them. It just seems like this bill could lead to more restrictions on us than foreign adversaries.
For the last number of months, this is a power move, no more, no less.
Yeah.
Please do your own research and participate in this process. In my opinion, we need more content creators and content platforms. We need more ways for your voice to be heard, your art to be celebrated, and your money to be protected. I am expecting some comments on this video, and I do want to hear your thoughts. Are you concerned about this bill, or am I just overreacting? Is there a correlation to crypto somehow? Did you burn in Eruption 3? Let me know down below and follow for more. Web3 is the future. Book games is forever. See you next time. Thanks for watching.